longer in maturity. So they're actually doing stealth QE for the part of the bond market that nobody wants to own for obvious reasons. You don't want to own 10-year, 20-year, 30-year bonds because of inflation and whatnot. You're okay to earn or own a 1-year Treasury bill because you get 4.5%, and it's better than putting your money in the bank. So that's what Besson has trouble selling, these long-term bonds. And himself and the Fed are going to do whatever is necessary to keep that rate lower. And if you're not going to buy them with your own money, he'll print the money to buy them instead. And that's ultimately what helps bring Bitcoin to 250,000 and on to $1 million by, I think, at least sometime before 2028.
And to that note on liquidity, you also noted that about $612 billion in expected Q1 2025 liquidity. How do you think this drives Bitcoin versus altcoins, perhaps? Any altcoin sectors you look at as well?
So obviously Bitcoin dominance is rising. It's about like 64%, something like that right now. I think a lot of people are looking around their altcoin portfolio and they own a lot of dog shit and it hasn't gone up in price. And then they question whether altcoin season is going to happen. But I think there has been an altcoin season, it's just you didn't own it, right? Did you own Hyperliquid? You could have bought it at $3 when it listed. Now it's at 33 or whatever it is. There's been other projects that have done in these other countries, and they're going to have to come to the table and do a new deal. And obviously that's very negative for risk markets. So these deals expire in late July and mid-August, and so I think we could have a period of probably a correction, maybe 20-30%, something healthy, something to get people shook a bit. And then once we enter into Q3, Q4, the Republican Party needs to prepare for the 2026 election and demonstrate to the American public that they have a good economy, the stock market's doing well, people have jobs. That means money printing.
On the global macro, you mentioned China, you mentioned Bank of Japan. You also highlighted the Bank of Japan's, their recent rate hikes, and also China's policies as crypto drivers. I'm curious, how do you think these international dynamics interact with Trump's pro-crypto stance specifically?
Well, I don't think they really have, they're all kind of the same thing. It's money printing. In Japan's perspective, the BOJ, Bank of Japan, has been saying that they want to normalize rates, raise rates. They're probably the loosest central bank out there versus their inflation target. And the market's not liking that. If you look at the 20-year plus bond maturities and stuff that the BOJ doesn't own, domestic Japanese life insurers are selling these bonds because they're losing money. Tradable, they have been tradable, people have been trading these things. It would be nice to make it a better and more transparent market that's on-chain. And at least I think these are easy things for people to conceptualize bringing into the digital space. I'm not exactly the biggest bull on a lot of other real-world assets like putting a property on-chain or whatnot, but I think these digital native assets coming and trading on digital blockchains makes fundamental sense.
You also invested, you coined a term I think called DeSci tokens.
I wish, I don't think I coined it.
Sorry, you coined the term through some mentions of projects like Bio and Vita. I think in one of your Substacks you emphasized decentralized science, DeSci tokens like these two Bio and Vita projects. Any parallels you see between these type of projects and maybe like domain assets in terms of potential traditional disruption?
You guys probably have a lot more product market fits so far than DeSci does. I think DeSci is an emerging narrative. Maybe we'll see a breakout in another sort of up cycle of people on chain with their own solutions, and obviously they have billions of dollars in TVL, been around for a long time, solid project. It makes money, which is great. Token holders get some of that. And EtherFi, which I call the American Express of crypto, OTC, and it's just it's a much deeper market than we otherwise would have believed because we're so conditioned to how it was reacting maybe 2 or 3 years past. So I don't really think that's a big risk. I think they probably have all the Bitcoin. Well, I'm not an investor. I don't give a fuck either way. So don't take that as my endorsement of Michael Saylor or MicroStrategy. I have no fucking idea.
Well, thank you. Next, we're going to go into the next question.
Hey, Arthur, how you doing, by the way? I've followed your story for a long time and respect everything you built. I'm an American citizen. I've been in Bitcoin since 2017. To me, one of the biggest liabilities was always having a U.S. passport to really be effective in this market. And everything you went through, if you were to go back in time or looking into the future, what advice would you give to people in the U.S.? Has the regulatory thing completely changed? Do you still have concerns? And what would you do differently?
So I guess I think a lot of people in the U.S. are very focused on the Genius Act or market structure, all these particular bills that supposedly are going to get passed within the next 6 or 24 months shareholder, then maybe that's what you want.
Thank you. Next question.
Hey Arthur, what's up? My name is Andres. My question is about real-world assets. You kind of touched on it briefly, and that you don't really, I don't want to misquote you here, but you don't really see the use case for a lot of real-world assets. What do you see as the use case? Car titles, house titles, I'm guessing maybe yes or no, but what do you see as some of like the really practical things that normies in the real world interact with that will or should at some point be on-chain?
Well, I think obviously meme coins showed us that normies like to trade culture. They understand it. Is this a viral piece of culture that I want to trade, whether it's a song, a meme, photo, whatever it is, and now you can go on chain and trade those things, and I think that makes a lot of sense. A lot of financial services is probably not going to make it down to the average everyday person. They still don't want to deal with passwords and all those different things you got to deal with when you're your own financial institution. They just want to buy an ETF in their retirement account, which is completely fine. But if you want to talk about how do you get 1 billion people on chain, well, if their favorite artist is launching some sort of coin, then they'll do it. But they're not going to, figure out how to use a strong password so they can go 5 steps to loop something and make a few extra. They claim to do this, that, and the other thing. Some will be successful, some won't. And over time, we'll figure out what is a successful business model. But sitting here today, I have no idea what that would be.
I'm trying to make the last question good.
Thank you for coming, Arthur. Do you think Bitcoin can hit 200 grand before 2026?
Yes.
Fair enough. My last question. I like that. Do you see Coinbase being in trouble with JP Morgan offering Bitcoin to his, actually selling to clients and stuff? Do you see them being in trouble?
So I'm not, obviously,
Coinbase.
I'm not an expert in the Coinbase revenue stream. If I had to guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the majority of the revenue comes from their brokerage operation because they charge something like 1% fees to buy and sell Bitcoin if you're a retail trader. Obviously, that's a very, very large margin, and if you're a JP Morgan or Bank of America, you can charge 0 for that trading, and you have so many other ways to make money from assets within your ecosystem.
The Nakamoto announcement was a pleasant surprise. I remember speaking with David saying, you're doing these conferences, and if you believe in Bitcoin, you ought to raise a lot of money and buy a lot of Bitcoin. He said, you got a point there. And I was just very, very pleasantly surprised that he went and did it. I think
also SoftBank, Tether, and Cantor investing into
the
technology.
21 announcement is great because it brought a huge amount of capital from SoftBank into the Bitcoin market. It's like bringing Masa-san into the ecosystem is good. I think it's great to have Tether supporting a U.S. listed company. I see, Metaplanet was a $10 million company, and a few months ago it was a $1 billion company, and in the last week or two it's been flirting with a $4 or $5 billion company. Most successful stock in the stock market. The blockchain group in France has exploded out of the blocks, and they're just growing incredibly fast. And then everywhere I go at this conference, someone says, I'm working on a Bitcoin treasury company in Hong Kong. I'm doing this thing in Korea. I've got this thing I'm working on in Abu Dhabi. We're going to do this in the Middle East. We've got this in the UK. About this. When you're selling a convertible bond, 70% of the face value of the bond is sold short as equity. So the convertible arbitrageurs are always arbing the equity against the bond. And in the short term, you're going to see, if a company says I'm doing $1 billion secondary stock issue, the stock's going to trade down. All of these things will be short-term dynamics. Over the long term, Bitcoin on the balance sheet has proven to be extraordinarily popular, driving increase in liquidity of the metaplanets, of the similars. It's driven the increase in liquidity of GameStop. It will drive an increase and a benefit to the rest. It might take, 3 months, 6 months, sometimes, perhaps even a year. But, the strategy is very sound, and all of these companies will benefit from it.
And you pioneered this strategy. Your balance sheet is worth north of $62 billion worth of Bitcoin. Is there a limit to how many Bitcoin you can own, or do you have a fixed number in mind?
No, we'll keep buying Bitcoin. We expect the price of Bitcoin will keep going up. We think it will get exponentially harder to buy Bitcoin. but we will work exponentially more efficiently to buy Bitcoin, you know? So as the US expresses support in Bitcoin, we have the Pakistanis announcing a strategic Bitcoin reserve that inspires the Emiratis, it inspires the Middle Easterners to also begin to accumulate in Bitcoin. It accelerates Bitcoin adoption in Brazil. It accelerates adoption in Mexico. It accelerates the moves of corporations. Eric Adams standing up on stage and announcing his intent to issue bit bonds for New York City, that's going to inspire Miami and inspire LA and inspire San Francisco. It's, you know, so it's healthy competition. There's more than enough to go around. The network is very anti-fragile, and there's a balance of power here that's created because the more actors that come into the ecosystem, the more diverse, the more distributed the protocol is, the more incorruptible it becomes, the more robust it becomes. And so, $10 on SEC lawyers to drive your car across the city. Everybody ought to have freedom to do business. And so, right now, we're in this intermediate period where there is no Market Structure Act. There is not in law the definition of a digital currency, digital token, digital security, digital commodity. If we want the world, if we want the industry to grow by a factor of 100 or 1,000, if we want to export, you want to export the currency of the United States to the world, you need digital currency. If you want to export the securities of the capital market, the Apple stock, the ETFs, the bonds to the world, you need digital securities. If you want to export all of the ideas and raise capital for all of the small, mid-sized businesses, you need digital tokens. And if you want to export the values of the United States, which are sovereignty, trust, sound money, freedom, you want to export Bitcoin. Bitcoin is American value, so you're going to export that digital commodity. I think it's very clear to me, there's a lot of work cap without the support of the banking system, without the support of the insurance companies, without the support of the credit rating agencies, without the support of mainstream media, with most of the power structure of the world, you know, looking askance at this. So I think that for Bitcoin to go to the next level and provide the prosperity that it can provide to the US and to the world, the world needs to be educated, and then all of these traditional 20th century financial structures, they need to embrace and at least treat this as a neutral asset. This week, for example, the Department of Labor rolled back guidance discouraging people from allowing employees to put Bitcoin in a retirement plan, right? And for a while, we were worried we were going to be investigated by the Department of Labor if we offer our own employees the ability to elect to buy Bitcoin. So I think there's been a lot of discrimination on the part of all of the
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.